Hello. I wanted to give you a little bit of direction and maybe just review of this assignment today called Deer Population in Colorado. So, what we're doing is we're taking what we've learned about resources and factors and limiting factors and all these things that could affect the size of a population. And then we're going to look at that as it relates to something very close to us, which is the population of deer in our state. So I'm going to just read through this with you a little bit to try to help. If you know how to do it on your own, you're welcome to just go through it and complete it. But if you get stuck anywhere, you can come back to this recording and hopefully it'll help you out. So here we go. Section A. Okay, so you can read along with me or you can just listen, whatever's best for your learning style. People in Colorado have noticed a big change in the number of deer in their state over the last decade. Changes in the number of deer would affect the whole ecosystem. So, scientists are trying to figure out what is causing the change. So, a little background, we have talked about and done some graphs, collected some data about how wildlife biologists or park rangers or ecologists might collect information about the size of different populations. So, this is what is happening here. We are showing you in a bar graph the number of deer represented in Colorado from the years 2005 to 2013. So you can see this is a little bit of an older study, but it still will model for us what we need to learn. And so what you see here are the size of the bars showing you how many hundreds of thousands of deers and in what year. So if you just briefly look over it, you can see it starts pretty high, over 600,000. It slowly starts to decline and then continues to decline over that whole period. So again, putting yourself in the position if that was your job, you would have to then figure out why. Why is this population slowly declining? Because if you look if the pattern would continue, it would we would assume that the deer would almost be endangered or extinct after a certain amount of time. So number one says look at the data on the graph above. Describe what is happening to the deer population. Use data, which are numbers, from the graph to support your answer. Okay, so this is what we just talked about in the lesson of the kaibab deer, when you guys had to answer question number 2 and you had to use data from the graph to answer your question. So to answer this question, you start with A and you describe what's happening. Do you see an increase or a decrease in deer population? And letter B, this is where you say these certain numbers that prove your description. So if you say the deer in Colorado from 2005 to 2013 look as though the population is decreasing, you would then say numbers. So in 2005, the deer population was over 600,000. However, it steadily decreased in the year 2013 to just about 400,000. Okay, so that would be a sample answer there for number one. So if you need to just stop this video and rewind so you can listen to that again, that's pretty much what you should be a great answer for number one. Okay, if you're confused by that. Now, number two. So this is where you're going to have to think about this a little bit. You want to list 4 possible causes for the change in the number of deer. So this is where you think about all the things that you've learned and all the things that you know about what could have the factors, those limiting factors that could increase or decrease a population. Think back to the wolf pack. What are some things that caused your wolf pack to decrease in numbers, or things that you noticed about the kaibab deer that they decreased in number? So there's a quite more than 4. So hopefully you can come up with some just guesses. This is where a scientist would make a hypothesis or a guess about why you think that those deer are decreasing, and you list them there, all 4, on number 2. Then you go to section B. So on section B, it says scientists have collected data to figure out what could be causing the change in the number of deer in Colorado. Some of the data the scientists collected is on the following pages. So what you are supposed to do is study this data that's provided here and then fill in the tables that are underneath the data. And then you see a little bit of information here. It says you must include data from the graphs and tables to support your answers. So it's kind of like in ELA when you are writing a peel paragraph and you have to have evidence from the text. Science works in the same way, and even more so, and that whatever you say or believe should be supported by data, and that data usually comes from something like a graph or a table. So here's some of the data. First part is a comparison between deer and elk. It says scientists investigated other animals in Colorado to see if their population showed similar patterns. Deer and elk occupy similar niches in the same ecosystem. A niche, this N word right here, this is the role or job or location that an animal or plant has in its ecosystem. Scientists gathered data to compare the numbers of each type of animal across many years and made the graph below. So, comparing deer, elk, and then you can see here, I want you to take some time and look over this graph. If you see the color that the deer are represented and then the color the elk are, you should notice a trend or the pattern that you see in the deer going down. However, what is information here is interesting is that the elk bars are going up at the same time that the deer bars are going down. So, in looking at that and those patterns that we just discussed, you want to answer the same question in the same way that you did up in number 1 and 2. What are you seeing, and what numbers prove that? Another piece of data that the scientists collected is that they investigated what deer eat. So, one of the things you could have put up here in number 2 was, they a possible cause would be lack of food. So scientists went right away and they were like, well, what do deer eat? So they eat sagebrush, and sagebrush is always grown in Colorado. However, elk can eat sagebrush and something called cheatgrass, which is an invasive species. So scientists measured the amount of these two grasses and then they made a chart. So they have the two types of grasses listed, and then they have the year and how much or how many of those grasses are present. So you need to look at that and notice what patterns do you see in the cheatgrass. So to answer the question for number 4, you're looking and you're thinking, oh, from 2005, it was about 41,000 square miles of cheatgrass. But if I look all the way up these different years, all the way to 2013, I see that it increased to 66,000 square miles. And that's the how you describe and type and answer the patterns that you see using the numbers on the chart. The next type of grass is sagebrush. So again, you state this in your answer, you state the same thing. In the year 2005, I noticed that there are 185,000 square miles of sagebrush. But if I look to 2008, 2010, and 2013, I see it has decreased to 100,000. So another, so go ahead and stop this if you need to, so you can re-listen to that explanation and get your answer into number 4. And when you're ready, come back and we will hit rainfall. So, rainfall, again, we can go back to this list, could have been one of the answers that you put here about, oh, a possible cause could be lack of rain or too much rain, something involved with precipitation as an abiotic effect. So, scientists did that and they studied the rainfall, and here's what they found. So, from in these years, rainfall had gone up a little bit and then down a whole lot, and then it kind of evened off. So that's kind of the pattern that we see. We see an increase, a quick increase, a steep decrease, and then it evens off a little bit for about 6 years. So you want to do the same thing. You want to use your own words here to come up with how to describe what that line is doing. And that's how you answer number 5. Again, to use numbers, you can say in the first year and a half, we see rainfall from 8 centimeters to 14 centimeters. Then you can say from about 2000, halfway through 2004, the rainfall decreased drastically from 14 centimeters all the way down to almost 2 centimeters. And then you could say from halfway through 2006, rainfall was steady at about 3.5, 4 centimeters through 2012. So, again, that's an example of how you would describe a line that you see on a graph, the pattern that it's making. And that would be number 5. So, again, you can stop here if you want to finish that and come back to section C. Section C. So this is and when I brought up Peel earlier, so scientists have to write their results to what they find in their investigations or experiments. And you know this if you've ever had to do a science experiment. We do it in a similar form to peel, like you do in ELA, but we use just different words to represent what peel is. So our claim is like our P of peel. It's like what you're, as a scientist, you are stating, what do you think caused that change in the deer population? So, like, if you remember back to, I think it's number three, you had some guesses. You listed four possible causes. So, this is where on number six, you get to say which of those, if it was one of those, actually did cause that change in the number of deer population. And then number seven is the evidence. So, the same thing as in Peel. What evidence did you use to determine that claim? So, you have to support from the data or from your answers that you already wrote, is what you goes here to support your claim. And then 8, your reasoning. This is where you kind of the L or the evaluate, the analyze and link of Peel. This is in reasoning. So this is where you get to say, this was my claim, and this is why I know what organisms need. They need biotic factors such as things to eat or plants or rain and things of that nature. So this is where you get to pull all those vocab words that we've been working on together to explain why you stated this claim and why you chose this evidence and what this animal, the deer, needs in an ecosystem. Okay. So hopefully this helps you to complete this assignment. Please let me know if you have further questions. Rewatch this as many times as you need, or come ask if you have a specific question kind of as you're going through. Good luck.